of polka dotted shorts, right? And you're just going to mix and match things together. So you're going to use that same red shirt with a pair of polka dotted pants and create a new report. So then you can use that tree to then break that down and give you the responsibility segments by location, by division, by department, whatever. Okay? So when you create your reports, you're going to create them generically enough that you can run them for whatever date range you need. So whether you need to run it on a current basis, so we're in June and we're going to run this for June of 2016, or maybe you need to go back and rerun the report for December of 2015. You have the ability to run the reports for whatever time frame you need to run. You have different levels of detail that you can run the reports. So if you need to go all the way down to a transaction level, you have the ability to drill into the report to see, okay, I'm starting on a revenue line that consists of this account, but I need to see all the transactions that make up that balance. You can drill into the report and be able to get down to that transaction level to see, okay, why is my budget not matching my actual? Because you had this transaction that hit through AP. And you can drill all the way back to GP and take a look at that transaction, and I'll show you an example of how to do that. Okay. So here's an example of a report design where you're creating your rows, and here your columns are going across. Okay, so you've got month of and year to date, and then if I want, I can take that exact same row and now I can create a different column that gives me budget versus actual with a variance. So again, if you take that clothes analogy where you're using the red shirt and you've got two different pairs of pants, you can match it up with the black pants and the gray pants or the polka dot pants. You're not having to rebuild the report every single time when you want to a different time frame. You're just mixing and matching the parts and pieces together. So you're reusing your building blocks. All right, so from here, we're going to jump into the product, and I'm just going to give you a quick demo of what this actually looks like. So we never actually did our poll. Michael, did we want to do a poll and find out how many people actually were currently using Management Reporter versus how many people are using FRX?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that right now. So you guys will be seeing on your screen the first question. It is, are you currently using Management Reporter? Yes or no? And we'll give about 30 seconds or so, depending on how quickly you guys all get your votes in. Ooh, we got a very attentive crew here. We got 95% in so far.
Ooh.
So there we go. So we got 48% on yes and, or sorry, 58% on yes and 42% on no.
Okay. So I guess let's do this. Well, I guess that means if you're, does that mean you're still, well, I guess going to maybe, okay, so we got 58% of the people are using Management Reporter, right? Is that what we were getting?
Yeah. Correct.
Does that mean that the rest of the people are using FRX or manual reports? Can we get a poll on those two?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So the next poll you guys are going to see is, are you using FRX? Are you still using FRX? Yes or no? Okay, I'll give the last couple seconds here before we close this one. Okay, so it's looking like we have 44% that are and 56% that are not.
All right, I guess the last one would be how many people are actually creating, or what's you know, are we manually creating, right?
And you guys should be seeing that on your screen right now. Give another 15 seconds here. Okay, so we have 19% that are and 81% that are not.
Well, that's good to hear. We like to hear that people are actually using some sort of tool to actually create their financial statements, because for those 18% that are still having to create theirs from scratch every month, they can they can attest to the pains of having to restate financials and the potential fat fingering that can happen because we've keyed in the wrong, trial balance number, or heaven forbid we had to make a change during the middle of the month, or we put a journal entry in and those changes don't get reflected into our new reports. So for those of you that are using Management Reporter, I'm glad to see you're here, and hopefully if you have any questions and you want some additional details on certain things, then please go ahead and make sure that you put those questions in, and I will answer any questions that you guys have. If they start getting too detailed, maybe we can take some of those offline, and I can provide answers for people if I need to do a little bit more detail explanation. But for those that are not using, if you have specific questions as well, go ahead and put those into the chat, and Michael will be monitoring those, and we'll get. So as you guys are thinking of them, go ahead and put your questions in, because I don't want it to get to the end and I don't get to somebody's questions because they didn't have enough time to type it in. So as we're going, if you come up with questions, go ahead and put them in. All right, for those of you that are not using Management Reporter currently and are using FRX, I just want to kind of point out that Management Reporter is the complete rewrite of FRX. And your leap to come over to Management Reporter, while it might look very intimidating and maybe it looks a little bit different, your leap to being able to use Management Reporter is going to be very small, because the underlying functionality of how you run your reports works the same way that it did in FRX. You still have trees, you still have rows, you still have columns, you still mix and match everything together to actually create your report. So if you're used to doing that already in FRX, then doing that in Management Reporter is going to be, you're going to have the same experience with that. There are going to be some touch points where Management Reporter does things a little bit differently than they do in FRX, and we may not necessarily cover those in great detail unless you guys want to get into some of that during the question and answering. I probably won't demo that as part of, the overall presentation, but if you guys want to ask specific questions about certain things during the question and answering, by all means I would be happy to show you some of the differences between Management Reporter and FRX. Okay, so when you launch Management Reporter, it is an application just like FRX was, where you're just going to have an icon that you're going to launch it. So when you open it, it's not going to ask you, depending on the data provider that you're using. If you're using Datamart, it's not going to ask you for any credentials. It's just going to launch, and it's going to log you in. Okay? If there is security that's been established. You do have to be set up as a user in Management Reporter in order for you to be able to actually even open it. So it's not like you can, like in FRX, you could log in as a different user and be able to get into FRX. With Management Reporter, it's using whoever you're logged into the box as to check to validate that you have credentials to get into Management Reporter. So even though you have Management Reporter loaded on your workstation, if you're not set up as a user in Management Reporter and you're logged in as yourself on your workstation, then you will not be able to launch Management Reporter. You'll get an error that says it can't connect to the server. Okay? There is no licensing limitation, I should put it that way. You can set up as many users as you want. It is a per person. You do have to set up individually because it is using your Active Directory, but there is no licensing count. So unlike FRX, where if you only had 2 users, only 2 users could log in Management Reporter, you can set up as many people as you want. You have different roles that you can set them up as. You can set them up as administrators, designers, viewers, and they obviously will get different rights based on the roles that they have been given, but you can set up as many people as you like. So this really enhances your ability to be able to set up viewers that might not necessarily be users of GP, but Maybe you've got department managers or you know, whatever managers that need to be able to look at financial statements. You can set them up in Management Reporter to be a viewer and then allow them to be able to look at things online. Okay, so you have lots of different options here, and there's no limitation for the number of people that you want to be able to set up.
And in that,
Right?
we did have a few questions that came in.
Okay.
So the first one is, how do we add a row if the row numbers do not allow a number in between rows? The numbers ran out.
Okay. Yep, I will address that when we get to rows. And was there another one, or was that the only one so
Yeah,
far?
we did have another one. I'm currently running MR currently, but one challenge is that an individual department report come in 2 pages rather than a single page. I have to go to print and select fit in 1 page. Is there a way to generate the reports to be in 1 page?
Yes. Oh, yes, I will show you that as well. Okay, when we get to Q&A, I'll do that one. Okay, so remind me about that one, okay, Michael? But when we get to the rows, I'll show that one is, the other one with the row codes, I'll show you how to do that.
Perfect.
Okay, so we talked about security. So now, for those that were used to using FRX, you used to have a panel that had the 4 boxes over here, and what they're doing is they were trying to make Management Reporter have more of a look and feel like it did with the ERP package. So now you've got the panels over here on the side like you did before. So we still have rows. And if I click on the rows, I'm going to see all the various different rows I have created. If you click on columns or trees, you're going to see the various different building blocks that you have created. Everything now ends in definition, where before it used to be row format, column layout, trees. Now everything is just row definition, column definition, tree definition. And rather than being called catalog IDs, they are now called report definitions, which to me just makes more sense because that's what it is. It's a report. It's a definition of a report, and a definition of a report is a combination of various different rows, columns, and trees combined together to create our various reports. Okay, so the panels over here on the side are going to allow you to see the various different components that you have within designers. This is actually the designer piece, all right? They have made a nice little folder structure over here so that if you want to be able to organize your reports to a certain degree, you can do that. So you can create as many different folders as you like and be able to just move things between the various different folders. You can't put folders underneath folders because I've gotten that question before, but you can create various folders and just grab stuff and move them into the various different folders. Okay, and you can do that with the rows and the columns and the trees as well. Okay?
And we had another question that just came in.
Okay.
How can you...
Let me go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead if you wanted to continue.
No, go ahead. No,
okay. How can you run different reports to run together in one PDF for each tree? For example, one department runs BS, IS, budget variance, and any other financial reports used for that department. Right now I have to insert each report into one with Adobe options.
Okay, let me go through a little bit, and let's save that one to the very end, and I will show you how all of those pieces come together. Okay?
Sounds great.
All right, so remind me about that one too. Okay, because there's a couple different ways I think that we could do maybe what you're looking for, but it might not be exactly what you asked for. Okay? All right, so you can create, like I said, various different folder structures. So if you open up a report, you can see here how we're using a particular row with a particular column and a particular tree to be able to create a report. So when I generate this, and I've already generated this, but I'm just going to go ahead and click on the little button next to the generate, and that's going to allow me to open a report that's already been generated. So it's going to open the last time this report happens to have been generated. Okay, so you can see over here on the side, I've got my listing of my trees, and I'm breaking it down by the department. Actually, I think this one is the division. And I'm getting a different income statement for the various different divisions. Now, I could take that exact same report and swap out my tree. So this one happens to be a division tree, and it's breaking down my division. I could swap out this tree very quickly and use it with a department, and then when I generate this report, now I'll get this same report, but instead of being it broke down by division, it will be broke down by department. And all I did was swap out the tree. I'm using the same row and the same column, and I'm just swapping out my the responsibility segment that it's going to slice and dice things on. So this is an example of report, the same report, but now I'm breaking it down and I'm seeing it by the department instead. So now it's just breaking down each report, and it's going to break it down into the department. So we can change these reports to actually use a different detail level and allow you to drill into the report. So this is one of the things that we were talking about with the detail levels. Now this is set up to go down to a financial and account level. So when you're looking at your reports, this is considered a financial level, okay? And if I were to click on administration, now I'm going to see the financial level for administration, but if I double click on this, it's going to allow me to get down to the account level. Now depending on the column that you're on, you'll notice that some of our icons up here change and allow us to become active when you click on certain things. Now I'm down to the account level of my report. I can actually click on this dynamic button, and you have to have GP open already. So you'll notice I do have GP open already in the background. But now if I click on this dynamics button, I'm on a specific account and I'm on the year-to-date version of this account. Now if I click on dynamics here, you'll notice down here, take a look at this, as it's opening up my detail inquiry screen, and you can see now I'm on December year-to-date. Now I'm in the detail inquiry screen from GP for the account that I was just clicked on. Okay, so there's my account. It filled in my detail inquiry screen. I was on the year-to-date, so there's my account balance. Now I'm in GP. I'm on the detail inquiry screen in GP. I can take a look at any one of these journal entries, and I can click on the journal entry, and I can drill all the way back to the source document if I need to. Okay, so it gives you the ability to still see the transaction and the detail information for a particular account, even though I only ran this report down to the account level. Okay, I could change this to go all the way down to a transaction level as well, and when that would allow, now I haven't rerun this report so I won't be able to do this, but if I wanted to, I would get the drill down button here that gives you the option, if you click one further, to have the transaction information be within the report. Okay, so if you've got users that don't have the ability to get into GP, but you want them to still be able to get down to transaction level information, you can still drill into it and have it be in the report. This is a way of being able to, you have two options, right? So you can actually have the information be in the report or only go down to the account level, but still have the ability to drill back to GP to be able to see that information. So as accountants, you may not necessarily need the account or the transaction level information in the report, as long as you have the ability to then drill back into GP and see where that information actually came from. Now, as an end user that might not have information, the ability to go back to GP, you would be able to give them that ability to be able to drill into it and have it be in the report. Okay, and there's different ways that you can actually format the columns so that you can break out that information. So if you think about like a detailed general ledger report that you can run out of GP currently, you could get that exact types of information in a report, but have it actually start from an income statement and give your users the ability to drill all the way down to the account level and have it see it as like a detailed general ledger report if you wanted to. Okay, so there's lots of different possibilities, lots of different abilities to be able to troubleshoot with that kind of information, or to just be able to provide that kind of information down to your end users, especially if you're doing like a budget versus actual report or something along those lines. That can be very helpful. Now, this is the desktop viewer. Okay, most people that are coming from FRX, this is what you're used to seeing when you're in drill down viewer from FRX. So a lot of comfort level comes with people that are in Management Reporter now, like to use this and like to see this view because this is what they're familiar with. Okay. If we come back over here into the designer, under tools and then options, you can actually swap which viewer you're using on the fly. So you'll notice that I'm just deselecting this option, okay? And I did not regenerate this report. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that button again, and now it's going to open it in the web viewer. Now by default, when you install the client, this is probably what you are seeing. So if you do not like the web viewer and you don't want to see your reports in the web viewer and you wished you could go back to a desktop viewer, you do have the ability to toggle that back and forth. So like I said, by default, this is set up like this where it's not checked. So if you again come back over here to tools and then options, you can click on this and it will allow you to toggle back and forth between being in the desktop viewer and being in the web viewer, excuse me, versus the desktop viewer. Okay. Now, one of the things I get a lot from people is the desktop viewer versus the web viewer. The web viewer doesn't print very nice. It only prints one page at a time. You have to come over here and look at print preview to be able to take the headers and footers off. Like when you're looking at this, you know, it's not putting it, you know, maybe it's got the same formatting that you want, and you have to click on the button to get that header and footer piece to come off, and you can only print one page at a time. So a lot of times people like the desktop viewer because from here it's going to format it the way that you're used to being able to format it in FRX. You can email things or print things from here. You can print all 4 pages from here. You're just going to get a nice board presentation quality if you're printing something from the desktop viewer versus the web viewer. However, there's all kinds of cool things that you can do with the web viewer. Let's get out of print preview here. One of the cool things is under the show, you can look at previous reports. So if you've got different versions of reports that you've run, you can click on different versions of them to be able to open up. Let's say you want to look at the December version of this report. You can click on the previous reports option and it'll allow you now to look at the December version. You can swap things between currencies here if you've got different currencies going on, which is something that you can do in the web viewer. However, you can't do that in the desktop viewer. You have to rerun things with different reports. Okay, I don't want to wait for that to come back up. All right, so we're going to close that. All right, so I just reopened that report so I didn't have to wait for it. You can refresh reports if you've got the ability to regenerate reports or whatever and you were looking at it in the web viewer. You've got a bunch of different options down here. You can download reports into Excel, or if you're in this view, you can always click here and it will actually open this exact report in the desktop viewer, provided you have rights to get in, like you have to have the software loaded for this one. So some of your end users might not be able to open up the desktop viewer because they don't have the software. If they only have the web viewer available. But this would be a quick way of getting you back into the desktop viewer if you need to be able to look at that. Okay? Okay, so tools option allows you to kind of toggle that. If you always want your desktop viewer to be that default, go ahead and click on this option, and then whenever you generate your reports, they will open up in the desktop viewer versus the web viewer. I know that's a big complaint for a lot of people. They want to be able to swap back and forth between that, and they didn't realize you could do that. Okay, that question that we got about I need to add a row and it's not letting me, it doesn't put a row code number on or something. So let's say that pretend that this was called sales and you had an alpha character here and you want to insert a row and then it makes it blank. You have to just come in here and just manually type a row code. Okay? Whenever you have an alpha character, it tries to split the difference. So like for example, if I insert a code here, see how it splits the difference between 140 and 170? Well, when you have an alpha character and you have a numeric character, it doesn't know how to split the difference, so it leaves it blank. So at that point, your row code just needs to be a unique value. You can give it whatever name you want. So whether you give it another alpha character or you give it a numeric number, it just has to be a unique number. I usually try and keep it within the same lineup so that, you know, things are in the same order. But it is just the name of the report. So hopefully that answered the question about the row code. If that person, whoever asked that question, could just, you know, say yes or no, or if you wanted more explanation on that, let me know.
We did have another kind of comment on that one. I think the question was what to do if the numbers are already consecutive and no room left. Perhaps renumbering?
Yep, you can actually come up here at any point and you can say renumber your rows and you can tell it to start at whatever number you want and increment at whatever number you want. And it will renumber all your rows, and you'll notice that these numbers will automatically update as well. Okay? Now be very careful with this because you can renumber your row codes and it will update your formulas and stuff, but if you've got those linked, if you've got these row codes linked somewhere else, like in a column or something like that, you will break your links. So you have to be careful with that as well. Not everybody knows how to do that whole linking with the row codes into their columns and stuff, so that's not a common thing, but it is something that could happen, that you could break your links. In fact, I just was writing a report yesterday where I was hard coding some of the row codes into a column to make certain calculations do what I wanted for certain rows, and then that would be an issue. But most people, that's probably not an issue, just to renumber your row codes. Okay. So, in example, we're using one row code and we were and we changed the tree. Notice here this is using PLE as my row. Column is just current year, and then I had division tree here. If I open this report, notice I'm using the same row and I was using the division tree, but I just swapped out the column. So this is an example of I had the same report, I just wanted different columns going across. So I swapped out my black pants for my polka dot pants, right? This is an example of, okay, I wanted to use an income statement and I wanted to break it down by my division, but instead of seeing just month of and year to date, now I want to see a year over year comparison. So I need different time frame going across my report.
Hey, Annette, do you mind showing the renumbering one more time? They might have missed that.
Sure. It's under your edit options over here. So you go to edit, renumber rows, okay? And then it's just saying what do you want the start code to be. So it's not like you can, oh, start here and do it. It's going to just start with whatever number you want it to start with. I usually start it at 100 and increment by 30. But you can change those numbers to be whatever you want. So you'll notice, so even if I were over here and I started at 700 and I say Renumber Rows, and let's say I start with 150, it's still going to start at the top. It's not in the middle. Okay, so just when you guys are doing that, it's not going to start wherever you're positioned, it's going to start at the top and redo all of them. Does that answer you guys' question? Does that give you what you wanted?
Yes, it does. And we also had one other question that came in. It was, how do you remove canceled reports, unprocessed, in parentheses, in the report queue?
Okay. It depends on the version that you're in. So we'd have to look at, if you come up here to help about, depending on the version that you're on, some of this will automatically go away after 7 days. Most of the time they'll go away after 7 days. If they're not going away after 7 days, then we need to take a look at what version you're on, and I might be able to go in and clean things up and give you a script that you can run that will delete some of that stuff. But on the later versions, on the cumulative updates, usually probably past 10 or 11, those will usually just clean themselves up after 7 days. So if you cancel a report, like the later versions, if you cancel a report, it usually clears it up. On the earlier versions of the CUs, the cumulative updates, if you cancel a report, you usually have to wait 7 days before it goes away, which is obnoxious, but that's the way they did it. So.
And we did have another question that just came in. Are there report definition templates?
There are default report definitions down here. If you don't see them in your listing of reports, you can always go to Tools and import default reports. But these are sample reports that come with Management Reporter. And if we just take a look at one, it's just going to be an example of, it's going to use a sample row, it's going to use a sample column, and none of them use trees, but row and column. So these would be demo reports. These would be your sample reports. So if you're used to an FRX, used to have the FW or FWC company that had demo reports in them or whatever, this is the replacement for that. But that a lot of times when you do a migration from FRX, it will wipe out all of those default reports, and so you have to manually re-import them. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. So if you're not seeing them, that could be why, because you migrated and then they didn't get pulled back in. When you pull them back in, it will try and create this folder depending on the version that you're on, and it may put everything in the same folder, so then you'll have to kind of like pull all the default stuff out. What I usually like to do, and you'll notice, see how all of my default reports I named as Z, okay? And I did the same thing with my default rows. I named them all, started with Z. I renamed everything so it starts with Z. And the reason I did that is because it doesn't take your folder structure into account when you're looking for things. So for example, here I am in my report definition, and when I click on my drop down, see how it just lists out all my reports? Well, I got really annoyed that all my demo reports were showing up in between all my live rows. So I renamed them all with a Z because this all comes in alphabetically, so it pushed all my demo stuff down to the bottom. Okay, and you can rename things pretty easily. You just have to click on a definition. You can do a right click and say rename. Okay, and then when you rename it, wherever it's being used in a row or a column or a tree or whatever building block you rename, it will automatically refresh that name wherever it's being stored. So you're not going to break any links by renaming anything, I guess is the long and short of that question. One of the things I wanted to show you guys really quick was report groups, because I want to leave some questions, room for some questions, and I know I had a couple more questions I wanted to, that came in I needed to answer for you guys. You can create monthly, you can create report groups, okay? And in your report groups, you can actually add reports so that you can group them all together and run all the reports at the same time. So I just named one called monthly reports. You can name your report groups whatever you want. You can create as many report groups as you want. You can put the same reports in multiple different report groups depending on how you need to run things and how you want to store things in the library. So you have lots of different options for being able to create these different report groups. But essentially any report definition that you have listed in this group, they'll all generate at the same time. One of the nice things is that you can then put all of those reports in the library over here. You can create an online repository type approach to your reports if you like. So before in FRX, when you would generate a report, it would just put it out to a network share, right? And then you could, export things to Excel or, whatever. In Management Reporter, you now have this library, and you can create any kind of directory structure that makes sense for how you want to store a report. So whether you have companies, and you want to store it by company, or you want to store it by, like I created a year folder, and then I put a year underneath, and then I was putting my monthly buckets underneath. So if I wanted to put my final reports in here, I'd be able to go in and identify which reports were supposed to go where. I can do security against these folders. Okay. So when you have a folder structure like this, it'd be kind of annoying to have to go into every single report when you go to generate the report and have to change where the distribution is going to go every time. So a lot of times what I'll like to do is I'll create a draft folder for all my report definitions, and I'll save all the reports to go to this draft folder so that when I run them as a one-off, they're just going to go to the draft folder. But then when I run them as a report group, I can say, okay, put all my reports into this particular folder. So any report that's being run with this report group, I can dictate where I want those reports to actually go. So if I come back over here and I look in my library and I look in my February or my January folder, you can see here's my monthly report group, and then here are the 3 reports that I ran for January. And if I look in December, here's my monthly report group, and then these are the 3 reports that I ran for December. Okay? And so you can have all your reports go to the correct folder without having to manually change every single one of them. So when you create a report group, like I said, it's going to run all the reports at the same time. It's going to create a group distribution. So these are the 3 reports that were actually included in my report group. Now whenever you do a report group, it is going to open things and it's going to look at them through the web viewer. You're not going to be able to look at them through the desktop viewer in this scenario. But what this allows you to do is it creates a link to each of the reports. And if you wanted to, you could email this link to your end users, and then when they open up that link, it's actually going to allow you to click on each of those individual reports. Okay, so if you click on it, it's just going to open it in the same window, but if you do a right click, you can open it as a new tab, and this one can be a new tab. Okay, so now these are just different tabs, and these are just pages, right? These are just web pages, and you can do side-by-side comparisons. If you had 2 monitors, you could throw one on one monitor and one on the other, so you can do a side-by-side comparison. And when you have a report group, now this kind of goes to one of the questions that somebody asked about the PDF thing. It's not quite the PDF thing, but I wanted to show you that from this group distribution, if you click on your download, you can export all those reports to one Excel file. So if I had 5 reports in my report group, when I export it to Excel from the group distribution, it'll create me an Excel file that has all the tabs in one Excel file. So I have 2 different balance sheets and an income statement here. So when this opens up, I'll show you what that looks like.
Awesome, and I think that did answer. We just had a question that came in. It was when you run the report group, can you save them off individually into Excel? So it looks like you're starting to cover that right now.
You can do both, yes. So
Okay.
the answer to that is yes, you can do both. If you do it from the group distribution, like see we were from here, and I exported from here, it created my Excel file. So here's my balance sheet, here's the account level of my balance sheet, here's my balance sheet summary, here's the account level of my summary, and then here's my income statement. This is the financial level, the account level, and then here's the individual branches of that tree. So you can see that every single branch, all of those reports all download into one Excel file. So it's a nice little package. If you needed to email somebody, you can now email them this Excel file. Okay, so you can do that from there or individually. If you open up the individual page and you don't want to send them everything, you can still download individually to Excel as well, and that would give you just the one page, or just the one report.
Great. And we had one quick follow-up on that, but you can only do it if you have viewer. Is that correct?
Well, everybody would have viewer because it comes with it. You just have to, choose to be whichever viewer you want to look at. But to be able to export everything into one Excel file, yes, that starts from viewer, not from desktop. You have to be in web viewer to be able to do that, because if you're in the desktop viewer, okay, so here we are in the desktop viewer. If I click on the Excel here, it's going to give me more options for this individual report, but I can't put two reports in one Excel file from desktop viewer. I can only put multiple reports in one Excel file from web viewer. So hopefully that answered that question.
Perfect. Yeah. And then just a quick reminder, we got about 3 minutes and some change left.
Okay, what was the other question that I said, oh, let me answer that when we get to...
So we had two of them. One was about fitting the two-page report into one.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
And then
So let me answer that one really quick.
Okay.
Okay. So let's close the group distribution here. Under settings and then under other, these are your options. You can say shrink to page width, and then you can play with your margins to try and get that in there, and reduce and enlarge. A lot of times where people are having issues is take a look at your row, okay? And at the bottom of your row, a lot of times it looks like this. And you have a whole bunch of blank rows at the bottom. And in FRX, it ignored them. But in Management Reporter, it thinks that they're actually description lines. So even though your end of your report is like right here, it's still going to try and pull all these blank pages on your report. So you may have to just go into your row and maybe try and delete all of those extra lines out of there so that you only get to the end of your actual report, and maybe that'll shrink up your report enough to allow you to get it onto one page. The other thing you might have to do is play with the shrinking, oops, hang on, back over here, come back over to your report under your settings. You might need to play, instead of doing shrink to page width, like say it's only three lines on another page, and you've already done the shrink to page width and that's not doing it, you may have to come up here and shrink and enlarge, and you may have to shrink this down to like say 65 or something, because keep in mind shrink to page width is already reducing it, it's just doing it to the width of the report, but you may need to do the entire thing. So if you just do reduce and enlarge, you might be able to get that, oh, it's going on 2 pages, but it really only needs to be 1 page, and it's just because you need to shrink it down just a little bit more than just doing the column widths. So those are the 2 things I guess I would take a look at, would be make sure you don't have extra rows at the bottom of your row definition, and maybe you need to play with the shrink and enlarge. So hopefully that answered that question. What was the other question? And they can respond to that, whether that answered that in fully or not.
Okay, the other one was, how can you run different reports to run together in one PDF for each tree? And then I have an example behind it if you wanted to hear it.
Yes.
For one department, run BS, IS, budget variance, and any other financial report used for that department. Right now I have to insert each report into one with Adobe options.
I'm leaning towards report groups because you can create a report group that allow you to run the reports how you want. That might be a question. I'm kind of getting the feeling that I might need to talk to you one-on-one on that one, just so I understand exactly what you're looking for. But potentially you could create different report groups, and even though in your report group you have certain reports or whatever, you could set up I'm not sure I'm completely grasping exactly what your question is. I'm sure there's a way to do it, and I'm kind of thinking maybe you and I should have a one-on-one conversation on that. So I'll show
Okay.
my email at the end, and if you want, you can email me that question, and I'll help you with it.
Perfect. Yeah, and I will log his name down too. And we did have one other question that came in. It was
Yes.
on cash flow statement. Can you show us how to have the line item for fixed asset additions or disposals? How would it handle if there were transactions done by journal entry instead of fixed assets?
Oh, again, that might be let's get a little bit closer, and do a one-on-one on that one.
Okay.
But normally in a cash flow, there is a cash flow default. Normally what you're doing is you're just listing out all of the individual accounts, right? And the way a cash flow is actually working is you're taking, oops, let's go into the columns. A lot of times people might want a month of and a year-to-date version of their column. So a lot of times what you'll do is you'll create a month of column, and to be able to get the year-to-date, you need to take the beginning balance, the 1/1 balance if you're on a calendar year, the year-to-date, and then subtract the two to be able to get just current year activity. So that would be how you'd get your current year activity for your fixed assets increases. But if you only need certain transactions, that gets a little bit more complicated. We might have to talk about that one in a little bit greater detail, because there are ways of being able to limit in the modifier, like if you needed to do certain attributes or something, we could probably do something along those lines. I guess it all depends on which transactions do you need to, is it, does that encompass it by saying only just give me current year transactions, or do we need to get more specific as to which transactions?
Well, awesome. And we've had a great number of questions. We did have one more if you had time to go over it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Is Microsoft replacing Management Reporter with Jet reports?
There has been a lot of talk with that, and right now they are going to be offering chat reports with certain limitations. There's certain functionality. Management Reporter is not necessarily going away. It's still going to be supported. They're still going to have bug fixes with it. It's still going to be a viable option. Everything that you see today, you will still have tomorrow and the day after that. They are just not adding any new enhancements to Management Reporter, but they are still supporting it. So if you're on Management Reporter, if you're thinking you want to go to it, I personally don't think necessarily that it's a waste of time, depending on the reports that you need to do. They are offering some limitation with JETS. I don't know enough about all of the parts and pieces because it's so brand new yet. But the part that they would offer with JET would just be the free portion of JETS. So you may still be limited in functionality there as well. So we definitely would want to take a look at what are they offering with the JET free portion versus what are you going to get with Management Reporter. So we could definitely have a more one-on-one conversation with you regarding those if that was something you were interested in.
Well, great. Thanks for the clarification. That is all the questions at this time.
Awesome. All right, so let me throw up my email real quick so that if anybody wants to take a look at current slide. All right, there is my email. If you guys want to email me with questions, I would be happy to respond. If there was something that you wanted more detail on or something I said maybe we need to have a one-on-one conversation with, definitely email me. And we can definitely take a look at it and see if there's a resolution to the issue that you're running into. And hopefully that gave people an overview of what is Management Reporter and what you can do with it. There's lots of things that you can do with distribution in terms of, you know, sharing things out to SharePoint, emailing things to people, and some of that kind of stuff. So I don't want people to get scared that, you know, they're saying, oh, you know, we're getting rid of Management Reporter. It's not going away for a very long time. I mean, look at everybody still on FRX, and that was technically not supported 5 years ago. So, you know, there's lots of options still.
Well, great, and thank you for the great presentation, Annette, and giving us a great little overview of Management Reporter and how we can utilize it. If there's no additional questions, then I think that's it. On behalf of everyone at Interdyne BMI, we just want to thank you for your attendance and have a great rest of your day. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.